you know how much this what? If you know how much was it today? How much for the camel today?
Hello. Welcome to Raymond Castile's basement of horror. This is the end of the 4th season. Yes, we've been doing this for 4 seasons. Sounds like a hotel. You have found yourself smack dab in the middle of the exciting season finale. And doesn't that look exciting? It's action-packed. Look at all this weird stuff. What is all this? Well, almost all of this is from Egypt. These are Egyptian souvenirs, knickknacks, stuff from Egypt. Except that puzzle. That's a 1976 HG Toys mummy puzzle. I had to get something authentically monstrous, vintage monster, in there somewhere just to stay on theme here. So that's a vintage monster. That's actually my childhood puzzle. So that is, I put that together as a child in the 70s and glued it on the back. It's glued to a piece of cardboard. And so I've had that since I was a kid. So there's the vintage monster presence in this episode. We're not going to talk about it. That's I've already just talked about it. That's it. But it's there just to connect to my childhood a little bit, but also just to have something that's authentically monster oriented. Because, and this poster, that's obviously the Universal Mummy, but mostly we're going to talk about stuff that's not exactly monster oriented. We're going to talk about mummy souvenirs. I like mummies, all kinds of mummies, and I have lots of mummy toys. And we're going to talk in particular about toys that come, well, they're not really toys, they're souvenirs, they're knickknacks, but they're from Egypt. Egyptian mummy souvenirs, like this thing. I'm holding it kind of weird because there's something inside that I don't want to rattle around. Stuff like that. And this, you might have noticed there's something on the table in front of me here. It's so big I didn't know where else to put it. We'll save that for last. This is actually one of my favorite pieces in my collection. I really like this thing a lot. And as when we talk about it, you'll understand why. But as I was saying, this is the exciting season finale. If you're new to the program, I do this in seasons. And this has been a long season. I've done several more episodes this season than in any other season. And it's gone later into the year than any other season. I usually wrap it up in March. Here we are in mid-May. And I need a break. You might be able to hear in my voice, I still have that cold. It's actually a sinus infection. And it's kind of severe. I saw a specialist. He wanted to operate. I said, no. I've had a sinus surgery before in 2015. I don't want to go through that again. And you'll just have to excuse my voice. I mean, by now you should be used to my really nasal voice. So if it hasn't bothered you the past 4 seasons, hopefully it won't bother you now. But it's even more nasal than usual. And my brain is even more scattered and foggy than usual. I'm definitely in a fog, but I'm always in a fog. I'm always about half there, half somewhere else. So just please excuse my nasally voice and my scatterbrained mind fog, and I'll give you the best show I can under the circumstances. Well, what do we have here? We have Egyptian toys. Well, souvenirs, knickknacks. And most of these came from a place called el-Khalili, or el-Khalili. It's a bazaar. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Let me give you some context. As if you've been watching the show, then you know I'm Egyptian. My mother's side of the family is as Egyptian as you can get. She was I think, the first member of her family to ever leave Egypt. I think before her, everyone in her family was born, lived, and died in Egypt. My father was in the Marines, and he was stationed in Egypt at the Egyptian embassy, and he met my mother, who was a nurse and an actress. She was actually in some movies in Egypt, and they dated, and my dad had to come back to the U.S. without her at first, but then he returned to Egypt, and they married, and my mother immigrated to the United States, where she had me and my brother Gamal. So that's my connection to Egypt. I did not grow up in Egypt. I was born and raised here in the U.S., in Missouri. And I've been to Egypt a few times, once in my childhood and a couple times as an adult. I haven't been there in a long time, 20 years. I would like to go back. I mean, I hope before my days are done, I can go back a few times, but hasn't worked out this century. Well, actually, 2001 was the last time I went there, summer of 2001.
Mr. Art, take picture for Sharif. Hi, Sharif. More than that, like that. Yeah, good. Okay. It's enough, Raymond. This is my new camel. Which one that? Okay. I'm taking him home to Missouri. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it would be nice to go back there and see my family. I don't know my family on my father's side. I don't keep in touch with any of them. I wouldn't know them if they were standing right in front of me. The family I know is my Egyptian family. But now let's connect this to these knickknacks, these mummies. I love mummies. Anything to do with mummies is exciting. I like mummy toys, mummy stuff. And I've seen plenty of real mummies in museums. There is a giant bazaar Not like strange, but like a place where people buy and sell stuff. A bazaar with shops and merchants. There's this giant bazaar in the middle of Cairo called el-Khalili. Or we can anglicize it and say Khan el-Khalili. Khan el-Khalili. Khan el-Khalili is... imagine if... like a flea market table. Have you seen Star Trek, the motion picture? Where that Voyager spacecraft goes off into space and it meets this race of other robotic beings that turn it into this vast, huge life form called V'ger. So imagine a flea market table that goes off into space and finds a planet of flea market beings that think this little flea market table is some lost alien, and they turn this little flea market thing into V'ger, and it's miles across, V'ger, and it comes floating back to Earth as V'ger, looking for its creator. Not like a crater on the moon, creator. It's looking for its creator. V'ger, the flea market table turned into a life form miles across. That's Khan el-Khalili. It's this gigantic, kind of sort of a flea market. I mean, it's a bazaar. It's got shops. It's got restaurants, but it's just vast. It's huge. It's ridiculous. You can easily get lost. It would take you a few days to really see the whole thing. So, Khan el-Khalili. My mother just said Khan el-Khalili. She called it Khan el-Khalili. Really, she called it al-Muski because al-Muski is a street that runs through Khan el-Khalili. And so my mom just always called it al-Muski. Let's go to al-Muski. Let's go shop at al-Muski. She didn't even call it. And when she did say the name, she said Khan el-Khalili. Khan el-Khalili. But anyway, Khan el-Khalili started in the 14th century. It is bordered on its eastern edge by the famous Al-Hussein Mosque, famous landmark in Cairo. And Khan el-Khalili is located in Cairo's historic medieval district that's often called Islamic Cairo, not for religious reasons, although most of the people there are Muslim, but that's not why it's called Islamic Cairo. It's filled with historic Islamic architecture. So the buildings are centuries old historic Islamic buildings. And that's why it's the famous historic Islamic area of Cairo. It was developed hundreds of years before the modern expansion of Cairo, which started in the 1800s. And that's when modern Cairo started to come into being. It's very hard to describe in words what it's like. You've got vendors out in the street who selling stuff off of tables and carts, and their donkeys trotting along. It's hustle and bustle, lots of people, lots of sights and sounds. And then there are these narrow little, I mean, they call them streets, but they're really like alleyways, but it's like a maze of these narrow little passages and these buildings that are just right up against each other. And you're walking in between these little streets that where you could almost touch each side of the street with your hands. And so they were built, I assume, hundreds of years ago, these narrow little streets. It's hard to describe what it's like being there. You just got to experience it. And there's restaurants and coffee houses, especially like where this mosque is. There's a little cafe right there, or you can sit there, and there's the big mosque in front of you. There's lots of cats running all over the place. That's nice. There's lots of stray cats. And there's a jewelry or a gold district. I think it's called the Gold District, but it's where all the jewelers are. And that's where a family friend has a shop. His name is George. We call him Uncle George. He was a friend of my mom when she was young, good friend, and we always knew him as Uncle George. And I don't know if he's still alive. If he is, then he's probably in his 80s. But he ran a jewelry shop in el-Khalili, where he worked with diamonds and silver and gold. And he ran that shop for decades. And it didn't change. Like when I visited the shop in my childhood and then returned in my adulthood, it was exactly the same. Everything was exactly the same. And here's some footage I shot on my last trip to Egypt. And you can see my brother Gamel. And this is just home movie footage. And you can see these streets that I'm talking about, how narrow they are. And this is Uncle George's jewelry shop. And I asked George a few questions about the location and the historic Islamic area of Cairo.
Where is this place?
It's a very, very old area in Egypt. It's the Islam area.
Islamic area.
Islamic area. It's Egypt al-Fatimiyya.
How old?
How old? 1040 كام؟ التاريخ العربي 1400 وكام؟
1420, maybe 2 3. Yes.
That's old. Very, very, very old.
Area. How long have you been in this shop?
About 30 years.
30 years?
30 years.
And that wasn't shot for any particular purpose. It was just home movie footage. I don't know what I intended to do with that, but it was, when I found that as I was planning this episode, I thought I just had to get that in there. So I don't know how Uncle George is doing. I lost touch with him over the years. But he was quite a character, very successful, wonderful family. He was a very good man. And if he's still around, it'd be nice to get back in touch with him. He, as you saw, he could speak English, so it's possible to talk to him if he's still around. But I'm not sure how to find him without going back there. He's probably still sitting there in his shop, just like that. But I don't know. Anyway, so there's el-Khalili, and it was important to establish that before we talk about these. Now, also, I need to tell you a little bit about the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. A wonderful, wonderful old museum. It opened in 1902. And it had the largest collection of ancient Egyptian antiquities in the world, including all of the King Tut artifacts, or King Tutankhamun, or Tutankhamun. We'll just say King Tut. All the King Tut artifacts. And I've seen all the famous, iconic King Tut pieces. They were all at that museum, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. It's a beautiful place that I loved going to. I went there as a child, and I went there as an adult. And like a lot of other things in Egypt, it had not changed very much from what I remembered in childhood and what I saw as an adult. And it's a fun place to be. It kind of reminded me of the British Museum. Very similar vibe. Although there's a lot more variety in the British Museum, but between the two of them, well, I like them both. But I think I prefer obviously the Cairo Museum, but I like those quaint, older, kind of outdated museums much more than modern, slick museums. And that brings me to why I'm referring to Egyptian Museum in the past tense, because it's being replaced. The Egyptian Museum in Cairo is being replaced by the new Grand Egyptian Museum. The new Grand Egyptian Museum at Giza. It was supposed to, the new Grand Museum was supposed to open a couple of years ago, but all kinds of things happened. COVID and other things happened. It's supposed to open this year, 2022. And when it does, I don't know what's going to happen to the Egyptian Museum. Are they going to shut it down, or is it going to have like a lesser collection, like the B level collection, and the A level, the A-list collection goes to the Grand Museum? I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. But the Egyptian Museum, if it isn't going to be closed, then it's certainly not going to have all the great stuff it did have, because that's being moved to the Grand Museum. Like all the King Tut stuff is going to the Grand Museum. All the mummies going to the Grand Museum. So I don't know what will be left, if anything, at the Egyptian Museum. But the Grand Museum, I mean, it hasn't opened yet, but from what I've seen online, it's very slick. Very, I mean, that's cool. That's cool. I'm sure it'll be an amazing place to visit. But I really will miss the quaint little old-fashioned Egyptian Museum. And I'm glad I got to see it in its original state. I'm glad I got to see the OG Egyptian Museum in Cairo with its classic collection intact. So I had kind of like how I think in another episode I talked about how I saw Disneyland before it had all the changes, where it's when it still had all the most of the original rides intact and the original Tomorrowland. Kind of similar. I caught that just in time, and I saw the classic Egyptian Museum before it changes or goes away. Whatever's going to happen to it, I don't know. Now, so why... I still haven't talked about these mummies, have I? How does that relate to all this? Okay, well, when you go to the Bazaar el-Khalili, you're going to find a bunch of knickknacks and souvenirs. Obviously stuff like this. That's what the normal people would buy anyway. There's a nice kitschy Egyptian knickknack. And all this stuff is kitsch, which is why it's fun. So what I like are the mummy souvenirs. And there's well, I don't know if there still is, but at one time there was a lot of cheesy mummy stuff. And here's a good example of a mummy item that you might find at el-Khalili. And I do believe this was purchased at el-Khalili probably 20 years ago. And let me open it. How am I going to handle this? Okay. So inside is this little goofy wrapped up mummy with like a cotton gauze. And it's very rudimentary. I mean, there's nothing to it. I don't know what's under there, but probably nothing. Probably just a shape like of clay or something. This is made of plaster. Most of the stuff is made of plaster, and you can see some areas where the plaster is chipping on it. And it's got a little tag that identifies it as made in Egypt. And this one's kind of crude, but I like it that way. I like the ones that are a little on the crude side. I don't like it too slick, too fancy. So I just got it in my head for some weird reason that I was going to buy as many of these goofy mummy souvenirs as I could. And I didn't get that far. I only have a few, but it just kind of became a thing with me. When I went to Egypt, I'd go to el-Khalili. I wouldn't leave without buying a mummy, some kind of a mummy. Now this was purchased in Egypt, but you can buy this in the United States. This is a commercially available mainstream mummy that you could buy this probably off of Amazon, or at least you could at one time, maybe not now. Or you could buy this at a museum shop in the United States. So this is not made in Egypt. And you can see there it's got a little mummy inside. And again, this is not an authentic Egyptian souvenir. This is probably made in China. And this very fancy, compared to the Egyptian-made stuff. So the Egyptian-made items are created by artisans in these little sweatshops, workshops in el-Khalili. These little factories where they're pouring plaster and hand painting this goofy stuff. This thing, I think, is probably made in China. I don't know if it says here. It says, does have something. Let's see what this says. It's made in 1999. But I don't I don't see a country listed. But like I said, it's much more detailed and fancy. More like a museum shop kind of an item that you would find in a museum in the United States. But yeah, I did buy this in Egypt. This was either in el-Khalili or it was in the hotel gift shop. One of the two. But that mummy is not typical of what you find at el-Khalili. Here is, well, this is kind of similar in that this is That looks factory made. Looks like a smaller version of what we just saw. And it also opens up, and there's a little mummy in there. I like this little mummy, he's cute. He was purchased in Egypt. Everything I'm showing you was purchased in Egypt. No markings. But this one's a little fancier, and I don't know if that was available in the United States. Probably. That's not a handmade item. But it was purchased in Egypt. Okay, so now here is, again, a more artisanal, however you would say it, more of a typical Egyptian souvenir. This is heavy. This is very heavy. Yeah, now that is handmade. And it also has a little mummy in it. Look at that cute little guy. Here's the lid again. He's hard to close. There we go. Alright, and we're working our way up to the favorites. I particularly like these mummy souvenirs when they have a stand. Like this one. It has this cockamamie stand. See, it's like a real museum piece because it has this stand. Just like a real museum. Let's take him off here. Again, some of these are resin, some are plaster. And the plaster ones are extremely fragile. And I like this one in particular because it has a, it looks like a mummy. Mummies, like in the Egyptian museum, they have a mummy room with all these mummies laid out. And some of them, they look kind of like these sculptures. They don't look quite human. They look like someone made out of clay. And then others are very human looking and remarkably preserved. Let's look at this one. So even though that is an authentic Egyptian-made item, this one's very detailed. But this is not a made in China kind of a thing. This is a made in Egypt souvenir. But unlike some of the other ones we've seen, this is very serious looking and very detailed and well sculpted. And now we come to our friend here, and I'll have to shoot close-ups of him after I'm finished and then cut them in, because it's not going to be possible to really do justice with him on this side camera. Okay, so this is why I talked about the Egyptian Museum, which is not part of el-Khalili. Okay, so my next to the last trip to Egypt, my penultimate trip, is in 2000. My mother was dying of pancreatic cancer, and we knew she only had a few months to live. So she wanted to see the family one last time, give everyone a chance to say goodbye and be together one last time. So we went to Egypt, and that trip was mostly about seeing the family and just spending time with my mother in Egypt, which was important to see her back in her element. And definitely when she arrived in Egypt, you could tell she was like her old self again. She was like back on her home turf. Well, so we were in the Egyptian Museum, which was, we did do a little touristy stuff. It wasn't all family. It wasn't all visiting family. Of course, we went to el-Khalili, or as my mom called it, al-Muski, because of the street running through it. We went there. We also went to the Egyptian Museum. Then in the gift shop of the Egyptian Museum, there was this humongous mummy, this humongous sarcophagus that I think is probably based on King Tut's sarcophagus, but I don't know that for sure. Just it looks like it probably is. Although the mummy that's inside of this is not based on King Tut. So there was this thing in the gift shop, and my mom was with me, and I wanted to buy it, but it was $250. $250. And my mother was standing there, and she just looked at me like, she just gave me a look like, no, you are not buying that. You're not buying that for $250. And I know that it's particularly with her health being what it was, if I had charge cards at the time. If I had whipped out a card and charged this thing $250, I would have shortened her days on this earth. I didn't want to upset her. So I had to walk away and not buy it. And it bothered me. So a year or two goes by, more than a year goes by, and I'm still thinking about this mummy. My mother passed away, and then my dad and my brother went back to Egypt after she died without her. And this was 2001, the last time we were in Egypt. And I was still remembering this mummy. Well, I went to the Egyptian Museum, and it was not in the gift shop anymore. They didn't have it anymore. So I thought, well, so much for that. But then I was in el-Khalili, and there was a vendor there, a merchant, who had this. I think he only had this one. And he also wanted like $250, same kind of price. And boy, that was a lot of money. I thought definitely it was something only for tourists. No Egyptian citizen would plunk down that kind of money for something like this, or for practically anything. I mean, some of my family, at least at that time, one of them told me that they made $40 a month working full time. $40 a month. So that was what the state of the economy was in Egypt. I don't know what that was 20 years ago, but hopefully they're doing better now, but probably, still not great. So to spend this kind of money on a foolishness like this, on something frivolous, I didn't tell my family that I wanted to buy this. But so I went over to Uncle George. See, I was tying this all together now. Went over to Uncle George, and I know he was like a wheeler dealer. So I said, Uncle George, there's this mummy toy I want to buy, but it's a lot of money. I know you're really good at negotiation. Can you go over and talk down the price? And he was very confident. Oh, of course, don't worry, I will get this price down for you. And he went over to where the guy's shop was, and he started haggling about this mummy, trying to get it down to like $50 or something. He was like, "This is ridiculous. $250 for that? For what? What? That's not worth that much." And he haggled and haggled and haggled, and the guy only would go down to $240. That's it. And then finally George had to give up. He turned to me and was like, he's not going down any lower. I tried. So I was like, oh, okay. I bit the bullet and went ahead and bought it. So I'd been thinking about it from on the other side of the world for months and months, even in the midst of all this family loss and all the things that are going on in my life. And I was still thinking about this stupid mummy. I wanted this mummy. So I wasn't going to walk away a second time. So I paid the money and I brought home this mummy. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to shoot some close-ups later, but I'll walk you through this now. What is this thing? This is made of, I think, resin. Yeah, this is not plaster. And these pieces, I think, are somewhat flexible. They're plastic. Let's take this lid off. And inside, we have a ghoulish Resin Mummy. He is a sight, with what appears to be real human hair glued to his head. And this gauze wrapped around his body, and then looks like it's been shellacked. Well, let's take him out carefully. He's heavy. Oh, I don't want to disturb him. Don't want to mess him up. Wow. Now, I think this mummy is somewhat based on the mummy of Ramses II, which is a mummy, very famous mummy that's at the Egyptian Museum. Now I'm sure it's been moved to the Grand Museum. Very detailed. This is... Look at that hair. And he's heavy. This whole thing is heavy. Put him back in his little bed. Let's see here. Let me show you the base. And this base is kind of rickety, but that just sort of adds to the charm. It's very, very rickety. Doesn't really support the weight of this thing very well. I don't know if there's a top or a bottom, but so this is handmade by Egyptian artisans. And this is the very heavy sarcophagus lid. That is amazing. And it's extremely heavy, so I'm afraid of dropping it. It's very heavy. Because if I ruin it, I'm sure not going to find another one. That's for sure. And look how the outline of the mummy, even though he doesn't fit inside of this, I like how it's carved as if he would. It's like got the shape of the mummy carved into it. Let's see this bottom part. That's what it looks like inside. So this is a special piece. I really like this mummy a lot. And you can kind of see why I became kind of obsessed with getting it. I'll turn him around this way. There we go. I think it's better. So, this is one of my favorite pieces, this Souvenir Mummy. Probably made by, and it's got little nails right on either end here to fit into these holes here. So it fits in a certain way. Probably made in some little shop, one of those alleys in el-Khalili. But it's not just a beautiful piece. It's got that mix of being very detailed and elaborate and also very kitschy and crude and clunky at the same time. It's both. And it's sort of the king of souvenir mummies. It's the souvenir mummy to beat all of their souvenir mummies. But then I've got that personal memory of one of my last adventures with my mom in Egypt. The last time with her in Egypt, one of the last major activities we did together. going to the museum and seeing this, and just that very typical mom response to like, just shaking her head back and forth. No, you're not getting that mummy. It's like, I was an adult at that time, but it felt like a little kid at Kmart. Like, you know, can I have this Tomland? Or whatever, something more expensive than that, let's say, is $6 million man. That'd be expensive. Can I have this $6 million man? Like, no. Maybe for Christmas. Not right now. So even as an adult, I'm not just buying it. Like, hey, I'm going to buy it. I'm still like deferring to her. And she's going, nope. And then coming back in 2001, and it's not at the museum anymore. Oh, no. But it's at el-Khalili. Someone had it there. And George, who's like the master wheeler dealer, not being able to get the price down, trying. He was like going to show me how it's done. Like, watch and learn. This is how you haggle. It didn't work. Because the guy selling it knew I wanted it. It wasn't George that I had to deal with. It was me. So he knew it didn't matter what George said. I was the one who wanted it. And he could see I was going to buy it no matter what. For one thing, he saw that I saw it. I asked about it. Then I left. And then I came back with someone else. So already he knows he's got me. He's got me on the hook. So I was not able to get the price down. But that experience with George trying to buy it for me, trying to get the price down, that just makes it a special memory. So a lot of good memories with this mummy, and all these lovely little mummies and all these little knickknacks. Classic el-Khalili, classic knickknack from el-Khalili. Another. I don't want to break that. These sand-filled camels. I think this is from my childhood. This one. Again, a very kitschy, touristy souvenir item. You'll definitely, to this day, you'll still find something like this at el-Khalili. I think this one's from my childhood, though. I mean, it's from Egypt, but I got it when I was a kid in Egypt. The time I visited Egypt in my childhood. Let's put him back without destroying him. But it's leather skin filled with sand. And eventually the sand starts to leak out of those seams. Okay. Well, speaking of camels, the last time I was in Egypt, I got to ride a camel. Not for very long, but that was a nice experience. My brother and I both rode camels at Giza, on the Giza Plateau. Well, there was one other thing I wanted to show you, but I think we need to first clear some of this stuff off. So since it would take a long time to do it the normal way, we're going to use magic. We're going to use the magic of the pharaohs. Authentic Egyptian magic. We're going to snap our fingers, and all this is going to be gone. And then I'll show you this one other, if we have time. If we have time, I'll show you this one other item. Okay, are you ready? We're going to clear all this off. Ready? Let's go. Here we are. Get ready. Let's move you. There we go. Don't want to mess him up. Okay, now we're ready. Here we go. We're going to clear all this off like magic. 1, 2, 3. All cleaned up. look, the mummies are gone. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that look at the mummies of el-Khalili. So I guess it's time to wrap up the show. But I was thinking maybe of showing you one more thing. But I don't know. I think everyone's had enough. It's been a long season. I'm sure you're all anxious to get on with whatever you're doing. You know, summer's coming. You're anxious to get on with your summer. So we probably had enough of this program, and I should just wrap up the episode and say goodbye. But there was something else I thought I might show you. Let's see. I don't think you're going to be interested in it, but let's just take a look here. It's this thing. I don't think you really want to see this. You know, since it's a mummy, and we're talking about mummies, I thought, yeah, it might be cool to show you this and take it out of the box and make it move around, see if it still works. But, you know, I don't think you want to see that. I'm sure you don't. It's time to wrap this up. It's been a long season. It's been a long episode. Thank you very much for watching all season long. So I think it's just time to say goodbye. But, well, I don't know. Some of you might want to see that. Let's take a poll. How about this? We'll do it based on applause. If you think this episode has gone on long enough and it's time to wrap it up, end the season, then on the count of 3, I want you to yell, "Wrap it up." See the little play on words, mummy, wrap it up. Clever, huh? So on the count of 3, if you're done, you're through, you want to end this episode, end the season. On the count of 3, I want you to yell, "Wrap it up." Got it? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, I hear there are definitely a few people who want to wrap it up. Okay, so if you're not finished yet, if you want to see that thing I just brought out here just a second ago, if you want to see that and see it out of the box, then on the count of 3, I want you to yell, "I want more mummy." I want more mummy. Got that? On the count of 3, if you want to see that thing, say, "I want more mummy." Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm hearing people. I'm hearing people. There's a few of you. Yes, there's definitely a few people out there. Okay, it was close. Okay, so let's do it all at one time. One more time. I'll say 1, 2, 3. And then if you want to wrap it up, yell, "Wrap it up." If you want to see that mummy, yell, "I want more mummy." Okay, and we'll see which one's louder. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. It's about even. A lot of people want to wrap it up. If you want that mummy, if you want to see the mummy, you got to yell, "I want more mummy." I don't know. There's a lot of people saying wrap it up. Okay, I'm hearing more mummy people. It's close. I wish I had a scientific instrument to measure this. Okay, it's a close call. But I think by a hair, the winner would be the "I want more mummy" crowd. I think you were louder. The ones who yelled, "I want more mummy," you were just a little bit louder. So for the rest of you, if you're done, you can just tune out now. Thank you very much. For the ones who want more mummy, let's have more mummy. So let's get this out here again. Now, if you don't know what this is, then why did you want more mummy? I don't know. I think most people know what this is. This is a 21-inch tall Telco Motionette licensed Universal Studios Boris Karloff Mummy. This is the Mummy Motionette. This is not the battery-operated one. I think that's 16 inches tall. This is the 21-inch one that you plug into the wall. So this is a somewhat rare item. You could call this hard to find. And among motionettes, it's probably the rarest, most desirable of all the Telco motionettes. I mean, there are some really obscure variants. There are Telco motionette collectors that are hardcore like that, and they may say that those variants are the rarest ones. But for most collectors, the holy grail of the motionette collection is this mummy. So, I don't like to talk dollars and cents too much, but one of these sold in October of 2021 for $6,900. That's a lot of money. This one's not going anywhere. This one is mine. This stays with me. I've had him quite a while. I guess at least a decade. I think a little more than a decade. And I got him in a trade with a friend who was on the Universal Monster Army, and he's still a viewer of this program. So I don't know if he wants to be named, but I want to tell him I'm very grateful to this day for that trade. And this is not a commodity to me. This is something that is very meaningful to me, and it is not going to leave my collection. At least not anytime soon. I don't know, 10, 20 years from now when I'm on my deathbed or whatever, but it's not leaving me anytime soon. So, but this is a very special item. This was made in 1994. And I've seen online, some people say 91 or 92. I don't know where they're getting that. Maybe is there, I mean, it says 90. I'll talk about the box in a minute. This particular box is 92, so I guess that's where they're getting it. But these motionettes were produced, the first series of the Universal, not the generic ones. I better back up a little bit. So I'm like in the presence of a celebrity with this mummy. I'm like tongue-tied around this mummy. Telco made the motionettes beginning in, I think, 1987 with the generic unlicensed Halloween motionettes. And they continued all through the 80s, all kinds of different variants and different characters, all generic, until 1993, when Telco put out some licensed Universal Studios monsters motionettes. They did Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, and the Creature from the Black Lagoon in 1993. In 1994, they added the Bride of Frankenstein and the Mummy. And they did two sizes. They did this big size, and they did a smaller battery-operated size. And they did some shaking heads, or just like a head with like a little apron underneath, and it shakes. So I know for sure this mummy is 1994. And so if you see it online, someone saying it's 91, 92, that's not right. It's 94, and that comes direct from one of the vice presidents of Telco, who I interviewed in 1993 for a magazine article. And he sent me all of their catalogs from the beginning. And we talked at length about the whole history of the company, everything they put out. And the first year, and one of the reasons we were doing the article that year was because they had this new Universal license. And that was the inaugural year for the Universal motionettes. And then we talked again in 1994, and he sent me a new catalog for that year, where I did a follow-up, a short little follow-up article about the Bride and Mummy motionettes. So it was direct from the horse's mouth. The Mummy came out in 94. So if you see any different date, it's not right. Now this box is not the box this Mummy originally came in. This Mummy was found, I think, in a thrift store or something like that. It was found in the wild, but it didn't have its box. So the person who traded this to me included this box, which was originally for a Wolfman, a universal Wolfman. So this isn't the box that the Mummy originally came in. Now, there's no difference in anything really, but definitely there's no difference in anything on the front of the box between the Mummy's box and the Wolfman's box. They all had the same boxes. All the characters in the set came in the same box. Telco did make and I don't know if the camera will pick this up or not, but Telco did make a variation of the side here with all these different universal motionettes pictured. This box only shows the Dracula, Wolfman, creature, Frankenstein. There is another version of the box that includes the Mummy and the Bride on the side, where these pictures are smaller, and there's 3 rows, and the bottom row is Bride and Mummy. However, and this little barcode is the only thing that's different from one character to the next. So this barcode does have a unique number. It's a sticker. It's not printed on the box. It's a sticker. And this is the only thing that differentiates one character from another, because the number on the barcode is specific to a character, and this number on this barcode, it's specific to the Wolfman. It's the Wolfman's barcode number on that sticker. In 2000, I talked to a collector who sent me pictures of his original boxed Mummy that he bought back in the day, and it was 2000 at that point. That it was only a few years after they were in stores, and he still had his original box for his original Mummy, and it was this box with the four characters on the side. And he sent me a picture of the barcode, which had the Mummy's number on it. So it was definitely the Mummy's box. So Telco packaged the Mummy in this style box with the 4 characters on the side. I'm sure they also packaged him in the box with the 6 characters as well, I would assume. But I know he did come in this, at least that example, a genuine, verified example, bought in the 90s from the original owner, had the Mummy in the box with the 4 characters on the side, and the sticker on the back was the Mummy's barcode number. So that's a long-winded way of just trying to talk about this box, but because it's not the original box, I don't want to mislead you and confuse you. I want you to know what you're looking at. So that's some context for the box. So let's open him. I think I will open him off camera, because I'm going to take great care in opening him. He was originally purchased at Frank's Nursery, $49.99. And interestingly, that's where I bought several of my Universal motionettes. I bought them at Frank's Nursery. I bought the big Universal Frankenstein, Dracula, and Wolfman at Frank's Nursery. And then I got my creature somewhere else, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and then I got this Mummy in a trade. And I don't have a big Bride of Frankenstein. At one time, she was very gettable, the big Bride. I have the little Bride, but I don't have the big one. At one time, she was really not that hard to find. But now she's almost as hard to find as the Mummy, the big one. and she goes for a lot of money. Now the bride is going for thousands of dollars. I remember you could have bought one easily for, I don't know, $400 or $500, which is still a lot of money, but it's not thousands of dollars. Obviously I should have bought one then, but I didn't like her. She had like big Tina Turner, like a troll doll, like a poofy kind of hair, and just, I wasn't too keen on her. But this mummy was never easy to find. When it was brand new, it wasn't easy to find. But I'll talk some more. Let's get this mummy out of the box. So we will do another snap. It's like Thanos. So we'll do another snap, and after the blip, mummy will be magically out of the box. Here we go. Here we are, and the mummy is out of his package. So here is this lovely Boris Karloff mummy, and you can see he is a beautiful likeness of Boris Karloff. And the colors on this thing, they look a lot like the famous 1930s one sheet for the original Universal film, and this is not it. This is a real art. Well, it's not even that. It's a bad reproduction of a real art re-release of the Mummy. So this is not the famous poster of the Mummy, but there's a couple of really great original 1930s Universal Studios one sheets for the Mummy that have very, very vibrant colors, and the color on this motionette seems like it's inspired by the color on those posters. So here he is. I guess we need to turn him on. Now, he hasn't been operated since I first got him, so it's been, oh gosh, a good decade since I've turned him on. So I don't know if he works. He might not. And I'm concerned about damaging him. He's fragile. Okay, well, let's take a chance here and turn him on, see what happens. Hopefully his arms don't pop off or something. Here we go. Okay, hold on. This is not the button that turns on. It's down here on the electrical cable. This is just for the sound. Okay, so let's try this again. Oh my goodness. Turn that sound off. Okay. I was like sweating bullets, like, don't break. Okay. Wow. That almost sounded like a Batman Joker kind of laugh. Now, it's my understanding that there are different sounds that these things make, and they don't all make the same sound. I think some of them have a more realistic laugh, maybe. I don't think by the time they got to these, I don't think they made the electronic I still have my cold, so it can't quite get that high-pitched squeal just right. But you know what I'm talking about. The motionettes had that electronic, I don't know, what do you call it? It's a screechy sort of, almost like a broken theremin going up and down, those tonalities, just, and then they changed it to a laugh. But I think there's another version that has a more realistic laugh. I'm not sure. But I do know that they don't all make the same sound. That I have heard that with this universal line, including the Mummy, that they don't necessarily make the same. Two of them won't necessarily make the same sound. But you just heard which sound this makes. So I'll turn them on again in a second and get some close-ups. But you just saw him operate. That's a rare sight. It's rare to see this at all. Rare to see it operating. And I didn't know when I turned that button and nothing happened. I thought, that's the way it is with mechanical toys. Sometimes they just stop working, particularly if you don't use them. Like I've got a bunch of Marx robots, like the Frankenstein, the Yeti, the Kong, the tree, all this kind of stuff, and I don't operate those things. They haven't moved since the 90s when I got them, so they probably don't work anymore. I don't know. I don't really care. I mean, I'd rather keep them preserved and not wear them out. This Mummy is pretty much the end of the line for the big Telco motionettes. They did make a few more sort of rebooted versions of the generic motionettes, like I think a Witch or something in the 90s after this, and they made some smaller ones. I think like there's a little Grim Reaper, and I don't know what else. I stopped paying attention after this, but the classic big motionettes had pretty much run their course by the time they got to the Universal line. This is the grand finale of the big motionettes. My interest in the motionettes pretty much ends with this Universal line. I prefer generally the generic motionettes in the orange boxes. I think most collectors do, but I do like the Universal ones too. And certainly I love this Mummy. This is the star of, by far, the star of the Universal line. Most of them are very generic looking. The creature's pretty cool. I really like the big creature. But none of them come close to the Mummy. They really knocked it out of the park with this Mummy and put a lot of love into this Mummy that for some reason they didn't put into the Dracula or the Frankenstein or the Bride. Maybe it was style guide situation. They weren't allowed to, but somehow they were allowed to produce this amazing, vivid, obviously Boris Karloff Mummy. And I don't know why Frankenstein couldn't be Boris Karloff. I don't know. Frankenstein's very generic looking. But this is an anomaly, this Mummy. It stands alone as really the only, not just the Universal series, but the entire motionette line from the 80s to the 90s, the only realistic looking actor likeness of the entire line. I mean, you could say that like the earlier Phantom of the Opera is inspired by Lon Chaney Sr.'s Phantom, but it's not a likeness. This is a likeness, and a really good one. If this were an action figure head, you would say that's a really good likeness. The proportions are a little exaggerated given the format, but it's basically, I mean, it's one of the better Karloff Mummy likenesses out there. It's really good. I think it's one of the better Mummy toys, if you want to call it a toy. It's one of the better Mummy toys ever made as far as like a licensed mummy, a universal mummy. It's really the star of the Telco motion nets. And it's rare because they didn't make very many. The guy from Telco that I interviewed in the 90s, he said that he couldn't give me an exact number, but it was in the 3 digits. So they made much less than 1,000 of these. How many, I don't know, but it was in the hundreds, not the thousands. And most of the other ones, for all the other ones, they made some quantity of thousands of them, of each character. This one, they made fewer than 1,000. How many exactly, he didn't give me a specific number, just that it was in the hundreds, not in the thousands. And he was a little confusing. And on one point, it seemed like he was telling me that there was one retail order, like a bookstore, a chain of bookstores, that was the only reason they even produced it, because they got one retail order for it. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist at all, just the prototypes. But he was a little vague on that point. But as I understood what he was saying, there was, the only reason we even had it in the first place was that there was one chain of bookstores that placed a retail order for this, and that's why they produced it, to fill that order for that bookstore chain. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't other retailers that may have had one of these. If someone says, oh, I saw this at a Frank's nursery, or I saw it here, I saw it there, well, maybe you did. I'm just telling you what I found out in this interview with this vice president at Telco. And he was a little vague on some points, like that one, about he didn't want to say exactly how many they made. And remember, when I was having this interview, this part 2 of this interview was in 1994. This was brand new. So he didn't want to put it down. He didn't want to give people a reason to not buy it, to like, oh, nobody wants that. No one's even ordering it. He wasn't trying to diss this product. He wanted to promote it. He wanted to pump it up. So that wasn't the time for like straight talk about how unpopular it was. He had the opposite mission, to try to promote these things and sell these things. So that's why there are not very many today. They didn't make very many in the first place. And it was probably very regional. Wherever this chain was, that's probably where you were most likely to find one. And if you didn't luck out and find one in 1994, October of 94, then you're out of luck. And this thing just never turns up, the 21-inch one. The small one is rare enough. I don't have a small one. The battery-operated mummy, I'd like to. But he's cute too, the little one. He's very cute in his own way. And I'd like to have one of those, but I don't. And he's rare, and he's getting up there. For a long time, he was like $300 to $500. But now he's getting up into the $1,000 range. So I hope I do get one of the small mummies in the next couple of years. I would like to have one in my collection. But, if I never do, that's fine, because I've got the big mummy. Most people, if they've got one or the other, they've got the small one. I can count on one hand the number of 21-inch mummies that I know about. There are many more Tomlin glow in the mummies, the 8-inch Mego-style mummy. There's many more of those that I know of than these. There's many more carded Azrakhamway creatures than than these. So you go down the list of rare monster items. There's more of them than there are of these. There are more Haunted Hulks than there are these. And a Haunted Hulk isn't a green guy, it's a pirate ship. A pirate ship with monsters on it. I mean, you name it, there's more of several of these very rare monster items that people talk about. There's more of those out there that I know of than these. These are very rare. So, I don't know what more I can show you as far as rare, beautiful monster toys besides this mummy. This is one of the pinnacles of monster collecting. It's more recent. It's not like a 60s or a 70s thing like you might think. It's kind of unique in that regard that it is a more recent item. And yet, I do think it is certainly on the level of the very rare Holy Grails of the 60s or the 70s. It's definitely easily in that league with some of that older stuff. Well, I'm just kind of babbling now, so I think it's time to maybe show you a little bit more of this mummy moving. So let's have a little bit more mummy motion. Okay, have you had your fill of this mummy? Okay, you can't say I want more mummy because we're not doing that again. Okay, well let's go back in time to the el-Khalili mummies, and then I will say goodbye from that world, the world of the Egyptian mummies that we were in a few minutes ago. Let's go back there, and then from there, I will wrap it up, okay? Here we go. We won't snap. We'll use magic, the magic of Egypt, of the pharaohs. We'll use magic to go back to the el-Khalili mummies. And we're back. We are magically back. We have returned to the land of the mummies of el-Khalili. It's amazing. They're all back. Everything's back. Well, I hope you enjoyed that special guest mummy. Now, please, in the comments, don't talk about the special guest. Don't spoil it. If people don't make it through all the Egypt stuff and the el-Khalili stuff, then they won't see the special guest, and that's fine. The special guest was just for you, the people who stuck it out and stayed with me through all that Egyptian personal stuff and looking at these knickknacks and everything, if you stuck it out and watched all of that, then you got to see the special guest mummy. So don't talk about it in the comments. I'm not posting any pictures of it. I'm not talking about it. It's a surprise just for you, the ones who stuck it out. Just like the people who've stuck it out all season to get to this last episode. Thank you very much. Thank you for still being here watching. I don't know why you're here, but I'm glad you are. I hope you enjoyed this last episode of the season. I always say it's the exciting season finale, but that's facetious. I'm being ironic. It's not exciting. It's kind of personal and rambling, and that's the way it is. I think last year in the season finale, I looked at childhood drawings. I just went paging through things I drew as a kid, and pictures of monsters and stuff, and that was the season finale. So it's always something kind of personal and low-key. And that's how I end the season. And this is the end of the season. Thank you for watching Basement of Horror. And if you're just joining us, you've got 4 seasons worth of shows. So watch all those back episodes. I know the YouTube culture is to only watch new episodes, recent stuff. But I try to make this like a TV show. And you can always watch reruns. Because eventually there will come a day where I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this indefinitely. There will be a final season and a final episode. But I will leave, of course, all these things up, and hopefully they'll be there for posterity, just like my website, the Gallery of Monster Toys, that I made in early version of it went up in 1995, and then the version you see today was uploaded in 1996, I think. And it's still there. I've kept it up all these years, just as I would keep this channel and these shows up, if I can, 20 years from now, if YouTube is still a thing. So I'm not making these just for the week they upload. I'm making these for all time, for people to watch years from now, if they're still available, if there's still interest. I'm making these for posterity and for more archival purposes, like reading an old issue of a toy magazine from the 90s, like the golden era of toy magazines. You wouldn't pick that magazine up and say, "Oh, this is from the 90s. I don't want to read this." No, it'd be very interesting. So I hope these episodes are seen the same way in years to come. If anybody's watching, I don't know that many people are watching now, let alone 20 years from now. I don't know that anyone will care. Probably not. I don't know if anyone will care about any of this. But if there is somebody out there who cares, hopefully these episodes will still exist for someone to watch in some format. Okay, well, that was a nice little ramble. I don't know what any of that was about, but I need to wrap this up. For real. I need to bring this episode to a close. All right, well, it's been a good season. The world is facing uncertain times, isn't it always? But it seems like every year when I do the final episode, there's some calamity happening in the world. And now it seems we've got calamity upon calamity upon calamity. And I stay away from politics, so I won't go into details. I don't want any political discussion in the comments. But you know what I'm talking about, the things that are going on in the world that have already been calamitous and will be calamitous. And we've just gone through COVID for the last 2 years. And it seems like every time we get out of the frying pan, we get into the fire. And it's a rough era of history. We're living in interesting times. We're living in difficult times. And I hope that this program, for people who are interested in this stuff, I hope this program is a little respite from those interesting times. I hope when you watch this, you can forget a little bit about what's going on and what's going to be going on, and just have fun, in a sense, talking about monsters. It's a kind of a one-way communication, but I feel like it's two ways. I feel like we're talking about monsters. We're monster fans, monster collectors, getting together every week to talk about monsters. And I hope it's enjoyable for you. And it's rewarding for me in as much as I feel like I'm providing a little bit of escape for people every week. And I'll probably do a live stream at some point this summer, so we will have some two-way communication. Or you can join my Basement of Horror Facebook group and stay in touch there. That's not going away. They'll be running all summer long while we're on hiatus. So go to the Basement of Horror Facebook group, sign up there, and you can talk monsters all summer long. And you'll know when this program comes back for special episodes or for the start of the new season. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you'll know when we do upload specials in the summer, and you'll know when the new season is about to start in October. So join the Facebook group and subscribe. Okay, I think that's it. We're done. For real. Thank you again for watching. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching all season long. And thanks for watching this long and strange episode. Thank you very much. Basement of Horror will return.